Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. We are happy to be here with you today. I'm Allison Scalber, Consolidated Planning Group. If this is the first time that you have ever joined us for one of our webinars, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you have joined many of ours in the past, welcome back. We're definitely glad you're back as well. So from a housekeeping perspective, I always like to go over that in the beginning. In case anybody's wondering, we are in webinar mode today. So we cannot see you or hear you, but we do know that you're there. So what we would like you to do today, as we're going through the presentation, should you have questions, we're going to be answering as many questions as we can as we throughout the presentation. We ask you that you go ahead and put those questions in the chat box. I'll be monitoring the chat box and we'll read those questions out to Annalee. So just for an update, Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We do a lot of advocacy work. We do a lot of webinars and helping our families that have a loved one with a disability plan for their future. We have a YouTube channel, Consolidated Planning Group YouTube, that all of our past webinars live on that channel. You can subscribe to that for free. I'll put that in the chat box. And today's presentation is being recorded. You are going to get a copy of today's slides as well as a link to the recording. So we always get that in the chat box. So I just wanted to mention that. Guys, from a holistic special needs planning firm, we are an advisory and consulting firm. We have over 30 years of experience. Families come to us that want to plan for their loved one that has a disability that may have care needs for the rest of their life, not just the rest of the parents or the loved one's life, right? We're able to come up with future care cost estimates, look at transition planning. We are nationally certified as Social Security advisors and members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We can help families set up ABLE accounts, have money in the right buckets, provide guidance on how and when to apply for state or federally funded programs or various waivers. Our whole practice is nuanced and special needs, and I come to you as both a parent and a professional. I eat, sleep, and breathe this every day of my life. So, when it comes to financial advisors, there's a whole bunch of them in the U.S. There's 250,000 financial advisors in the U.S., and only 0.1% of all financial advisors actually focus on special needs. And we always just say that your situation is specialized. It's really important to work with a specialist when it comes to planning and having things in place and having those money in the right buckets and planning ahead for these things. So today is a brand new presentation. We have never partnered with Annalee Kruger in the past. We are super, super excited about this. Today's presentation is going to be, Are You Ready for Crisis? And she's going to be talking to us not only about our children or adults in our lives with disabilities. It could be seniors, it could be minor children, it could be kids transitioning all across the board. But in my practice, that's a question that we ask a lot is, are you ready for crisis? And I think that the key is when it comes to planning, Annalee, a lot of times our lives are busy, our lives are complicated, and so we have good intentions. And then somehow it gets pushed to the side, and then we're going to get back to it. And then days turns into weeks and weeks to months, and how it goes. Yep. But what we're really trying to talk about today is don't wait. You don't have to be a millionaire to plan ahead. Okay. It's about planning ahead and not waiting for an accident or a critical, stroke or brain injury or heart attack or some kind of event that wasn't necessarily planned to where the family says, wait, we didn't do this, or, oh no, now this is what we're dealing with. So Annalee, it is so much my pleasure to have you here with us today. Again, guys, I want to invite you guys to put your questions in the chat box as we go through. And Annalee, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Allison, for having me as your presenter today, or co-presenter about emergency preparedness and crisis management. My name is Annalee Kruger. I am going to Hopefully, can I advance the slides, or are you going to do that, Allison? There you go. Okay.
I'll take care of it.
Okay, great. All right, perfect. Thank you. So my name is Annalee Kruger. I come from the long-term care industry 30 years ago when I first started in the long-term care industry. I started as a social worker and marketer for all of the continuum levels of care. So independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled rehab, and skilled nursing. And then I moved into the executive director position. But part of my job was always every day meeting with families, usually the adult kids, who found themselves blindsided by a crisis with their parent. Maybe mom is the caregiver to dad with dementia, and mom, because of caregiver burnout, became overwhelmed and she had a stroke, and now she's in the hospital. And the kids are like, oh my goodness, what are we supposed to do? We have to be at the hospital to talk to doctors and advocate for mom because she can't talk, but dad's not safe at home. What are we supposed to do? So every day I had families in my office because they were blindsided by the crisis. The tour would only take about an hour, but I would spend 2 and 3 hours at a time with each family because they had so many questions and family dynamics. And when I would ask them, is there a living will in place, a power of attorney, a do not resuscitate, the answers were always the same. I don't know. Our family never talks about stuff like that. So in 2011, I decided to leave corporate America and start my own consultancy company. I went virtual right away because I have families all across the country. So what we do is while my goal is to always reach families while they're still in that sweet spot of being proactive, where you're starting to see the writing on the wall that maybe mom and dad aren't doing as well at home as you would like to think, that's the best time to start working with us to have that aging plan put in place, with facilitating the family meetings and what's working well, what's not working well, what are the goals, what, as you aging in place at home, moving into a care community, what's that look like? What's the cost of care? All of those kind of things. So, we went virtual right away, and that's what we do. We work with families all across the country who have aging parents or special needs children, and they're like, we can't balance our lives very easily because our home life takes so much of our time and energy, and so do mom and dad, and so do our career. So how do we work all this together? I also wrote a book called The Invisible Patient because I've literally had thousands of adult kids say, I love mom and dad, I just don't know what to do with them and how to best serve them. While my goal is to always reach families proactively, the reality is, you can see there that 92% of families come to me in crisis. And because they waited so long to move forward with a referral, or by the time they found care right, their relationships as a family are so strained and dysfunctional because they're all burned out and overwhelmed, that 85% of my clients, I'm doing family mediation with them alongside of family meetings. All right, so next slide is going to be talking about aging planning and why it fits in with special needs planning, and why it's important to have both. Okay, so we're going to cover all of those things: statistics, considerations, mistakes, red flags, strategies, and importance of family meetings. All right, so aging planning statistics or aging considerations. In 2020, ARP's survey found that 44% of caregivers report that their care recipient has or had plans in place for future care. This includes instructions like how to handle financial matters, so like their financial power of attorney, healthcare directives, and living arrangements. 38% report that there was no such plans in place. 18% aren't sure what is in place, and 45% of caregivers indicate they have plans in place for their own future care. But often and you can go to the next slide, often what people think is that they have everything buttoned up if they are working with a financial planner or a financial advisor, if they have long-term care insurance, and if they have their estate documents. A lot of people just assume that means that everything is buttoned up, but it's not. The aging plan is all of the day-to-day stuff, and caregiver burnout, and dad's in the hospital again, or mom's dementia progressed. What are we going to do? So when you think about aging considerations, this is the format, or this is the profile of a typical family. Most families don't live down the street anymore like they used to 30 years ago when I first started working with families. So if you're an out-of-state son or daughter to aging parents, how are you going to manage when there's that medical crisis? When you get that crisis call that dad had a stroke and he's in the hospital and you have to leave your home and fly to wherever it is that dad lives and you have a special needs child, how are you going to manage all of that? What if your parent who is a primary caregiver becomes ill? What is your plan? You're banking on mom being healthy to take care of dad with dementia, but what if her health changes or she dies unexpectedly? What about your child with special needs? Who will take care of them while you are away? Example, one of my best girlfriends has a special needs child who only she and the grandmother are trained to be able to manage his care needs and his behavior needs. The mom had an obviously unexpected stroke. And now my friend is left trying to take care of her special needs son, manage her mom's care, and run her business. So these are obviously very real, everyday things that happen. Are you in a financial position to leave work for a period of time or step away from your business for a period of time to manage all of these crises? What if you have two aging parents and then you also have two aging in-laws and they all start getting sick around the same time and you got two of them in the hospital in two different states? How are you as a family going to juggle all of that? And is your spouse supportive of your crisis trips? It's most spouses in the beginning are like, oh, okay, this is awful that your dad fell again. He has Parkinson's and he falls a lot. And you have to leave our home for a period of time. But after the fourth or fifth or sixth or whatever number that is, the spouse is going to be like, look, you don't have any energy for our own family, our own marriage. And all these crisis airfares are like $1,200 a pop. And you're missing a lot of our own family time. So what is going to be your plan? What if your parents need two levels of care? What if mom is demented and she needs memory care because she's wandering around and has her days and nights mixed up, but dad needs independent living level of care? How are you going to make sure that they don't end up separated as they age? Will you be satisfied if your loved ones end up wherever there is an open bed because you didn't put a plan in place? Because that's how that works. If you're not already on the waiting list, or your loved one isn't already on the waiting list of several care communities, they will end up in whatever facility has an open bed, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be the right fit. And then you, as the caregiver, you're already a full-time caregiver to a loved one with special needs. How are you holding up? When you get that crisis call that, something has happened with your aging parents or your in-laws, and you're already, kind of burning out as a caregiver, you might not have enough emotional bandwidth, grit, energy, or time or support to now have to take care of aging parents and have to maybe travel back and forth. So what conversations have you had as a family about the what-whens of aging? Where are you going to live? What do you have in order? What do you have for insurance? What are your burial wishes? These are conversations families don't want to have. That's why I started my company in the first place, because families aren't talking.
Yes, this is so important, and one of the things that I think for most of the families that we serve, again, they have a loved one, maybe a child or an adult child with a disability that may have care needs for the rest of their life. And so, we do have a lot of families that are saying, hey, I'm pretty good right now, but I'm not getting any younger. I mean, I've had people call me and say, I'm 85 now, and my granddaughter is absolutely full care, and I feel pretty good, but I mean, it's only a limited amount of time before my health is going to start to fail. Where do we go from here? And so I think everything that you're talking about is so critically important, just as we're thinking about our aging family members, but it's kind of on steroids if you have a loved one with a disability that you are the primary caregiver for. It's really concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so, I cannot stress the difference between a proactive minded family who has the intellect of saying, ooh, I'm seeing the red flags here, let's act on this, versus families who chose to wait until they're in crisis mode. Those family meetings, the tone of them are completely different. There's laughter and joy and joking in a proactive family meeting, and then there's not any of that when there's families in crisis, because they're burned out, they're scared, and they're overwhelmed. So mistakes
Emotions definitely run high in those
Emotions run
situations for
high
sure.
and big decisions have to be made quickly, and people make knee-jerk reactions and they don't know what they don't know. And then they make huge, massively huge and expensive, in many ways expensive, relationship wise and financially and care options wise. They make huge mistakes because they don't know what they don't know. Everyone thinks that they have more time to put a plan together, and they simply don't. All the people that had major strokes last Thursday didn't wake up thinking, I think I'm going to have a major stroke and really upset the apple cart of my life, my finances, and my own family's finances, and my own family's time and well-being. So there's a fair amount of denial that I have found that we have to kind of work through with most families, because they just think that they have more time or everything is going great right now. And I always say that's good. Like, this is the best time to plan if you want to have the best quality care options and the best family dynamic outcomes. Ignoring the red flags or warnings that are almost always there, that's a huge mistake. Weight loss, if you're seeing caregiver burnout, whether that's you as the caregiver or your mom or your dad who's the caregiver to their spouse who's ill, ignoring those signs of when a parent or a loved one says, I just can't sleep anymore, or every time my head hits the pillow, all I do is worry about your dad. Those are blatant, obvious indications of worry and stress and caregiver burnout. Depression and anxiety with a caregiver is so prevalent. Death of the primary caregiver or aging parent who's the primary caregiver. We know that caregivers age 66 and over, who are the primary caregiver of a debilitated care recipient, have a 66% mortality rate. So adult kids or people should never be surprised when that primary caregiver takes ill or dies. It just never occurs to them that this could potentially kill one of their aging parents. Dementia progression. So many of my clients come to me so ill-informed and uneducated about dementia progression and what that really looks like from a care need, 24/7 care, and just what that disease does to their behavior, to their personality, to their mindset, to their decision-making abilities. So dementia progression is a huge piece of the education that we also provide. ER visits is a red flag that, when people are in and out of the ER or hospitalized frequently, that's a sign that things aren't going well at home, and we need to be putting an aging plan in place like STAT. Falls is another example of these are red flags that most adult children ignore, or they think that somehow miraculously things are going to get better on their own, and they aren't. We don't get healthier as we age. We get more debilitated and lose mobility and need assistance as we age. So part of this is really breaking through that denial. Mistakes families make with their aging loved ones continued. Ignoring your own warning signs of caregiver burnout or compassion fatigue, feeling angry, feeling on edge, resentment, strained relationships. Oh my goodness, if mom needs one more thing from me today, I'm going to lose it. Gritting your teeth and trying to not talk back or be sassy. Missed work or career opportunities. A lot of us adult kids are the caregivers to our aging parents, and it can jeopardize our careers. It can jeopardize our own finances. If we're not working, we're not making money. And if we're not making money, we're probably not contributing to our retirement accounts. Changes in your weight, changes in your sleep. Feel like your own life is spinning out of control. Those are all red flags that if you're the caregiver, you need to be putting a plan in place. Waiting until crisis mode versus proactive planning is unfortunately what most people choose to do or seem to do. But if you want to have the best outcomes, you need to plan ahead. The other thing is not having family meetings to discuss the what whens of aging and not having documents in order. And we'll talk about the grab and go binder and what that looks like further into this presentation.
Annalee, can you address, because I know for some of the families that are on here, and I hear this at least once a week, of it's me, I'm the end of the line. I am the caregiver for my adult with special needs. We don't have any other family either in this state or none at all. I really worry what's going to happen to my loved one when I'm gone. Do you have suggestions for families in these situations? Like when they feel like they don't have anywhere to turn, how do they navigate that?
Yeah, so that's often what we're working with our clients is, and that's why we facilitate the family meetings. Tell us what's going on with your family, what's working, what's not working, what are the concerns, what keeps you up at night, what do you want to take off your caregiver plate, and then let's put a viable, suitable plan together so that you don't have to worry and you can get your peace of mind back. And again, a lot of this is understanding what their care options are ahead of time versus finding out when the discharge planner at the hospital says, oh, your mom, Sally, is going to be discharged tomorrow. And you're like, to where and what's happening? So it's really critical to know what those care options are, have your aging parents, have these conversations and be on the waiting list of care communities. We do a care matrix. So we do all of the market research of everything families need to know so they can make informed decisions. What's the waiting list look like? Do these care communities in your area offer the levels of care that you need now and down the road? What happens if you run out of money? How sick can your loved one be and still stay in assisted living? What are they licensed for? Are you going to get that call that says, look, sorry, but you ran out of money and now your mom has to move. And now where's she going to go? Trying to get into a Medicaid care community is not ideal at all. And so that's why in those situations, in any situation, it's really, we have to start these family meetings and we need to work together now and start put a plan in place so that these families can have the best possible outcomes.
We had somebody in the chat box say, hey, I'm the sole caregiver to my 2 special needs kids and I'm slowly needing to care more for my widowed mom. How far in the future should I look at putting her on a wait list for memory care facilities? What is that timeline? That's a great question.
Yep. And that's, again, the proactive nature of putting an aging plan in place, right? So that we can say, okay, where do you live? Where does it make sense for mom to potentially move to as far as memory care? We've forever had a national shortage of quality memory care beds across the country. And that's only gotten worse, especially since the pandemic. Some memory care communities only allow females. Some are only for males because of behaviors and sexual behaviors and all that kind of stuff. Your loved one has to financially, physically, cognitively, and behaviorally qualify to get into any level of care. They be assessed before they can move in. And so that's why we teach families what are your options, and everybody's situations are unique. Depends on what the financial picture looks like. What are her behaviors? Is she going to be hard for a community to want to accept into their care because she's combative and violent and biting and kicking? That's why we work with these families on a white glove customized approach, because everybody is different. But in general, the sooner that you can start wrapping your mind around all of these scenarios and all of these issues and start doing tours of care communities that are the right fit. And that's why we look at there's about 15 different things that we gather for information for our families so they can make smart decisions. Otherwise, what they do is they do all of this tours on their own, and they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know what to look for. And then they end up having to relocate their parent 2 or 3 different times. And that's the worst thing you can possibly do to someone with dementia.
One thing I want to mention here, Annalee, and I know that you and I talked about this before, there are some locating services out there that you don't have to pay for, okay? We're not going to name names here, but you don't have to pay for them, but you want to be very careful. I personally want to caution you about using those services. Those services are paid for by those facilities. And so they're not looking out for what's in the best interest of your loved one. They're looking out for what's the best interest and best payout for themselves. They're not looking for this perfect fit. So it's the difference of the free services and commission-based services versus hiring someone who's really listening to the family and looking out for your loved one, whether it's a special needs adult child or whether it's someone elderly in your life, whether it's for yourself. I just wanted to make a point on that. You can speak to that a little bit more, but I'm kind of against that. If we're really truly looking for a good fit, I get free is nice, but you're getting what you pay for. I just want to convey that.
And I am glad you brought that up, Allison, because the other caveat to that is, in my opinion, these are people and their lives. They're not a boat or a truck meant to be sold to the highest bidder. Whereas we work with families, we value the relationship. That's why I don't advertise. I've never had to advertise, because all of our clients come to us for word of mouth referrals, because we care about our clients' outcomes. The other thing to think about with those, what they're called placement companies. It's just a transaction. So once mom is moved into the facility and they get their kickback, you don't hear from them again. So what if they moved her into, or what if you moved her into a facility that's a poor performer, or they don't allow cameras? And that's an important thing, you know? And so it's a transaction. It's a one and done. And there's no follow through. So if you're in a care community that doesn't offer quality care, they don't teach you anything about how to be a bold advocate. We have an 8-page checklist that we provide our clients about, okay, if you're going to be the advocate, these are things you have to check on that you wouldn't think you'd have to check on, because you're paying thousands of dollars a month for care, but you have to. And so ours is a lot of education and teaching and support through the whole process, through end of life. And you're not going to get that. It's a transaction with those placement companies.
And you know, the thing is for a lot of families, it's baptized by fire. Like, you learn some of these things because you've gone through it, you've gone through this crisis, or a lot of things. It's just like, you've never done this before. So how do you know what to do or where to start? And again, if a loved one is not doing well, you're not doing well, you're not feeling happy about those things, and worry and all those kinds of things. So very, very important. Thank you for that.
Well, and that's why I do all these webinars and podcasts, to say, hey, there's a service out here that helps you navigate all of this, because you can't expect to make the right decisions when you're in uncharted territory and emotions are high. You know, common misinformation that families come to us, and this is about 99% of families. They use Medicare and Medicaid interchangeably as if it's the same program, or they'll use assisted living and nursing home as if it's the exact same level of care. Or they're like, if dad's dementia progresses, or if mom's Parkinson's disease progresses. So, you know, it seems like when we have a loved one with special needs, we research that the entire disease forward and backwards, so that we know what our loved one is going to, you know, have to endure, or what we're going to have to endure if we have a child with special needs. But yet, as adult children, when dad gets that dementia diagnosis, we don't research it to know, what is this going to entail for him, and what's this going to entail for his finances and us as a family, or what happens when dad no longer recognizes us, or he hits me because he doesn't recognize me as his daughter. So that's why we educate families. A lot of what we do is really just education. And again, you know, memory impairment, most of my clients have memory impairment. There's many diseases out there that are a dementing illness. And so I work with almost all of them. But missed appointments. So like, these are the red flags. If you're starting to see the red flags of maybe mom or dad aren't doing well at home, this is another list. We can go through those, but I want to be mindful of time, because you are going to get this as a PowerPoint as well. So, but those are some red flags of memory impairment, and please don't ignore them, because dementia is a progressive brain disease. Their brain just shrinks. And that's why you see all of these changes in their mood, behavior, and ability to make smart decisions.
We did have a question in the chat box, and I know all of your contact information and your business is going to be, how they can contact you is going to be in the slides. They said, how do you get paid? Your services can't be free. And absolutely, the services aren't free, but the families pay for their services. This is a private pay, paid by families. It's not paid by insurance. Facilities don't give her a kickback. You want to comment any further on that? And then, and I know you can do, I think you have tailored services to each situation, where you talk to the family, you know, about that. Tell us about that really quick.
Yeah, so it starts really with a 30-minute free Zoom consult to say, okay, what's the background here, what's happening, and what's your concern, and are you uncomfortable enough with your situation that it makes sense to put a plan in place or crisis management. So it starts with that complimentary 30-minute Zoom consult. Then we can take it from there as far as what package, or maybe you just need a few hours of consulting to kind of get things in order. So we work with most people's budget, but yes, we are fee for service. And as far as I know, CareRight is the only company in the country still so far that is providing these types of services and the virtual advocacy services as well. So far, we're still the leader in the market, which is great. So yep, it just starts with that 30-minute consult. Red flags that you're heading into a crisis. And I know this is like a really big triangle and probably hard to read, but we're just going to go through this really quickly because some of it is a recap of what we talked about on the slides already. But the blue triangle at the top, when you're starting to see and you're starting to get concerned about maybe forgetfulness or weight loss, or they're unsteady when they're walking, or your loved one is starting to make poor decisions, like getting scammed by anybody who calls and they're giving out their credit card information. Those are some pretty red flags that you cannot keep ignoring. Worry, the second stage, and these are just examples, but worry that your loved one will get scammed, more falls and ER visits or hospitalizations, concern that your loved one has dementia. Maybe they're starting to be repetitive when they call you or when you see them. Things just aren't looking like they should be at home. You're starting to provide more care oversight and starting to worry more. You're starting to mention your concerns to your siblings, but no one else is concerned. That's that denial piece that I talked about literally every single day. You begin missing more work and you're dropping off meals. You are starting to handle medications, coordinate doctor appointments. You're starting to feel overwhelmed. Your loved one's dementia has progressed and you're struggling to manage the mood, behavior, personality changes associated with dementia. So you can see how you're like heading into this crisis. Your spouse is frustrated with you because you're not present in your marriage. You are missing out on more and more of your own children or grandchildren's events. You try to stress your concerns to your siblings, but they think you are overreacting. You are starting to feel alone in this caregiving journey and begin to wonder if you are in over your head. I call that the caregiver snowball, where it starts out feeling manageable, but then all of this other stuff becomes apparent and you're missing work and you're starting to be worried at night and you can't sleep. You know you're in crisis when you are spending several hours a week tending to your loved ones. Your siblings are not helping you and you are feeling angry, resentful, overwhelmed, and you spend most of your time and energy worrying, and you realize you are in over your head. You are fighting with your siblings and your spouse often, and you don't know what to do. Your loved one is in and out of the hospital and you are physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. So those are red flags that if any of that spoke to you, we need to be talking. Aging strategies. Caregiving and aging can be a positive experience if families have an aging plan. Just like you have an insurance plan, or you have a financial plan, or you have your legal plans in order, aging planning is just as important as all of those other plans that you probably already have in place. Because again, the quality of care is going to be impacted and your quality options are going to be jeopardized and limited if you choose to wait until you or your parents are in a medical crisis. When you see these red flags, that's when it's the best time to call. Just like when just as when you're choosing to work with like Allison and her team, you have better outcomes the sooner you start working with a professional versus being 62 years old and say, okay, Allison, here's my $500,000. I want to retire next year and I'm going to probably live till I'm 105, work your magic. And you're like, wait, what? You should have come to me like 30 years ago. So the sooner that we can start putting that proactive plan in place versus a crisis plan, the better.
So this part, and again, we know that we have families here that are here because they have a loved one with a disability, and again, sometimes in both situations where we have, aging, family members in our life in addition to a loved one with a disability. And, you know, these are a lot of statistics, and a lot of our families, we know these. 54 million Americans cope with special needs. You know, there's 41 million Americans, or almost 15% of the population age 5 or older, have some type of disability. About 20% of Americans between the ages of 16 and 64 suffer some form of physical or mental or emotional impairment. And 75% of special needs adults are without employment. So we know underemployment or without employment is a real thing. So these are some of the things that we're, addressing. And so some of the things that we work with families on is developing a future special needs care plan that includes those future care cost estimates, like, you know, how much money does my child need when I'm gone? How much money do we need to fund the special needs trust for their future care? We help families and kind of direct them on the Medicaid waivers and the interest list. All states, so if you're joining us by podcast or out of state, all states have Medicaid waivers. They're not all the same. They're different. And they may have different names, but they do require Medicaid eligibility. Some of the states have no waiting list. Some states, like Texas, for instance, has a 17 to 18-year waiting list for most of the big waivers that help with attendance services or respite services or things like that. So we do have an entire webinar on the Medicaid waivers on our YouTube channel. You can check that out with links on how to apply, how to get on the list, and that kind of thing. We kind of explain all of the different ones. We help families understand SSI and SSDI, and where you were talking about, that people use the term Medicaid and Medicare interchangeably. They also use the term SSI and SSDI interchangeably, and they are two very, very different separate programs. So knowing what those programs are, when and how to apply, and what to expect with that process is important. And one thing I always note here, guys, is that everything changes when your child turns 18 or when your loved one turns 18. You may have applied for things in the past and maybe you were denied and you were pretty angry because you couldn't even fathom being denied. But it might have been because you were just denied because of assets or income. Everything changes when they turn 18. It's based off of their assets and income, not yours, even if you have full guardianship, even if they live in your house, under your roof. So you can reach out to us on that. ABLE accounts, there's two places that people can have money outside of the $2,000 Medicaid requirement. Guys, that hasn't changed in like 30 or 40 years. It's kind of on the block to change. I heard that it was suggested to go up to $10,000. It didn't pass. It's time for that to pass, but it didn't. It's still $2,000. But there are two places that we can have money outside of, a regular bank account that won't be counted for Medicaid or SSI purposes, and that is an ABLE account if the individual's disability started prior to age 26, which, by the way, in 2026, they changed the law effective 2026 that the disability had to start prior to age 46. So we're going to have 20 more years to play with as far as the disability starting. But an ABLE account is one place, and a special needs trust is another place that we can have money for the future care cost of our loved ones with a disability. There is a look back. So, some of the elder care planning, and I know, Annalee, you probably make this recommendation of an elder law attorney. If we have family members that don't necessarily have a lot of money, maybe they have 10 grand, for instance, and 2 grand is what they have to have to be Medicaid eligible. There is some elder planning that goes along with that. There's some gifting and some other things that happen. There is a look back period, and I believe it's 3 years is the look back for that. But don't wait for the crisis to happen, because you do have a look back period. So I just want to make that clear. We always talk to our families about beneficiary designations because of that $2,000. It is critically important that we don't name our aging family member that you may want to qualify for Medicaid. I don't know if you do or not, but also any special needs children or adults. that are going to be eligible for SSI and Medicaid or any of those Medicaid rate waivers, because when we leave money directly to the child as opposed to their special needs trust, it jeopardizes their eligibility for Medicaid and SSI, and it renders you completely necessary to hire an attorney and get a first party special needs trust, get a court order from a judge. We call it an oops trust. Oops, I forgot not to do this, or I forgot not to, I forgot to talk to my parents and tell them not to leave money directly to my kid. So those are really, really important. And again, our recommendations are always to start touring residential living communities sooner versus later. It costs you nothing but your time generally. Most of the places to put you on their waiting list, they do require a tour. After COVID, a lot of them did go to a virtual tour. I've toured a lot of places, and my opinion is take the day, go tour in person, because you can see, and it's not just virtual, you can really see and feel the vibe there, and you know your loved one if they're going to be a fit there. So make a day of it, take a day trip, go have lunch afterwards or something, but everyone I've ever toured, I was really happy that I did. As it relates to special needs, and we do have all of these on our YouTube channel, consider guardianship, alternatives to guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. In Texas, we have supported decision-making agreement. And guys, I can't stress this any more than when it comes to your aging family members, having that power of attorney and that healthcare power of attorney before that crisis happens. And I always would be remiss to say, don't forget your neurotypical kids that you're sending off to college at age 18. I'm also a fan of the power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney when it comes to that. Many families, I would say, up 95% of families either have a very outdated will, power of attorney, or healthcare power of attorney, or none at all. That is one of those things that we were talking about in the beginning that we're going to do and then we don't get to. So if you're taking notes, just put that on your priority list, to look at those things as a very, very important when we're talking about crisis and things like that. And then, of course, we also think when we're thinking about special needs as any, post-high school education options, older kid options, transition programs, day programs, various programs that also can provide some caregiver respite, right? So if we have a loved one, I call it the marathon, not the sprint. So if we have a loved one that's going to have care needs for the rest of their life, it's the marathon, not the sprint. And we've got to have some built-in respite for the caregiver. So if that's a day program that they go to 2 to 3 to 5 days a week, if it's a summer program where you get 3 months off during the week, or whatever it might be, right? These programs are really going to be important to your own health. The thing is as parents, we're always doing for our loved ones and putting ourselves on the back burner. And as you were talking about burnout, that's what I was thinking about. So having some kind of balance with that is really, really important. So the key things to remember for a special needs family member: make sure you're receiving all the government benefits you deserve. There are a lot of programs, childhood disability benefits under a parent's record when a child's disability started prior to age 22. We talked about SSI and Medicaid. When a child is eligible for childhood disability benefits after 24 months, they'll be eligible for Medicare. So they'll be concurrent enrollees of Medicaid and Medicare. And it's very, very important to have money in the right buckets to maintain those government benefits. And for a lot of our families, it's to maintain the Medicaid waiver. Some of these Medicaid waivers, some of the names that I'm thinking of for Texas are HCS, Texas Home Living, Community First Choice, the class waiver. Those are examples of waivers, and they do provide attendant hours. Some of them provide therapy. Some of them provide respite hours. And all of these waivers are designed to keep your loved one with a disability in home and community-based services versus institutionalization, right? That's the point of these waivers. So some of these budgets on these waivers are as much as $340,000 a year. So it's not small. So that's why it's, because I've had families say, well, who cares about SSI? It's $914 a month. I mean, what does that pay for groceries? It doesn't cover a lot. But I think it's the Medicaid eligibility that's required for these waivers and these big budgets of these waivers that really, really matters. And really, it's important not to underestimate the amount of money that you need to take care of your loved one for the rest of their life. I talk about this as being the third retirement bucket. So if you're in a marriage, okay, we got husband and wife and 25 to 35 years in retirement. And then if we have a loved one that has care needs for the rest of their life, it's almost like a third retirement bucket. And so that's where those future care cost estimates are very, very important. When we do those estimates, I call it small, medium, and large. What if your child needs some help? Like maybe they need an attendant that comes in and checks on them a couple of times a week. What if they need more help? What if they need full residential care? What does this look like? Small, medium, and large. So we can provide those estimates for families on that. And I think the big thing, and we were talking about beneficiary designations earlier, and I would just suggest here, if you have any family members in your life that might leave your loved one with a disability, some type of money or inheritance, I just have some intentional conversations with these family members. Earlier, I told you there's 250,000 advisors, financial advisors in the U.S., and about 125 of them have any background at all in special needs. And what that tells me is grandma and grandpa's advisor doesn't have any, experience in special needs. So they need to be educated. Grandma and grandpa or any, loving family members that want to leave money, they want to do it the right way. They're not trying to do it the wrong way. But we have to educate them that it is important and imperative that it goes to a third-party special needs trust to avoid those problems that we were talking about. Okay, let's see here. We have something in the chat box. The medical power of attorney document provided by HHS state requires a physician statement stating mental competence of the patient. Is there any way around this? Yes, don't use the state document. Absolutely. So first of all, healthcare power of attorney and power of attorney is not required to be signed off on by a physician. Now, there are documents that do need to be signed off on by a physician. In the example, you have guardianship. In the example that you have guardianship of the person, you don't need the power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney. You have those rights under the guardianship of the person. But a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney, I would also like to say, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, I'm not a fan of do-it-yourself legal work, okay? We work with a lot of attorneys that are not nuanced in special needs, and even though they themselves are an attorney, they're still working with an attorney that is nuanced in special needs or an elder law planning attorney. They might be a real estate attorney or tax law attorney, but they're not a special needs attorney. So I'm not a fan of do-it-yourself legal work. We are happy to provide referrals. We have referrals of great attorneys all across the state, and we can definitely help you with that. Even across the country, we can help you with that as well. There are things, when it comes to a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney, there are downloadable documents from the web that you can get Texas for something like that. You could do that. We don't recommend anything like that as far as creating your own will or trust or anything. I always say, don't get crazy. There's places that we got to spend some money on, and you want in the time of crisis, you want to make sure that your documents are right. The last thing that I want to warn here, and we do run into this every week, Annalee, is questions about families that have a loved one with a disability, and there isn't a guardianship in place, but there probably should be in that example. And what I mean by that, in general, our kids are going to sign whatever we put in front of them. When they're 18 or older, if you put a healthcare power of attorney and a power of attorney in front of them, if they have, the ability, they'll sign what you tell them to sign. But what we have seen over the last year is where people didn't have the guardianship, they had a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney signed by an individual that did not have capacity. So, I'm talking about intellectual disabilities, IQs below 70, the incapacity to understand a contract or what they are signing, and have actually seen in a healthcare setting where the parent presented the healthcare power of attorney in a hospital setting, and it was denied because the hospital said, This person doesn't have capacity, and they didn't have capacity before this, right? So this isn't going to fly. So all I would say there, guys, is just you don't have to know what you need as far as guardianship or partial guardianship or the power of attorney or healthcare power of attorney. All you need to know is that you need to work with a qualified attorney. They're going to listen, and they're going to learn about your loved one, and they're going to walk you through the steps of each of your options and help you come to that right decision. So just don't, I know a lot of families do very much stress over this, so I just want to tell you not to, and the attorneys will help you with that for sure. Annalee, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. So we probably have very similar conversations about this type of thing with our clients, right? Because I always tell families too, because, people always want the cheapest route. Well, there's places to trim the budget, and legal is not one of them, because it will come back to bite you in most cases. And then it's just going to cost you thousands of dollars to undo what you did going the cheap route. So, and just like you have a whole trusted network of professionals. That's one of your value propositions of working with you. Same thing with Care Right. We have vetted professionals all across the country so that you don't have to just Google and hope for the best and provide that type of, and find that type of provider. So leverage the professionals who are in this industry, who care about you and your outcomes. And don't just like use Google and try to be like, okay, what attorney should I use? Work with someone who's already vetted these people.
For sure. All right. I think we've kind of talked about most of these things. I think for the sake of time, we've got about 9 minutes left, starting on time and ending on time. I'm going to turn that back over to you on the importance of family meetings.
Yep. And I think we covered this pretty well too earlier in the presentation about that is one of the many reasons I started my own company in the first place, is because families kept saying we never talk about stuff like this. So they didn't know what their parents had in order for insurance, or they didn't know who their parents' financial planner was, or where the estate, who the estate attorney was, if any of that was even in place. So the importance of family meetings is you've got to be able to have these conversations, be comfortable with them, which takes time. If you feel like you're not able to have these family meetings on your own because you are in uncharted territory, or your family dynamics are such that you just can't have these types of in-depth conversations as a family, that's what we're here to help you with, is be that neutral third party person to guide you through that whole family meeting and put some solutions in place so that you're not trying to do all of this at the 11th hour and being overwhelmed by the whole process. So family meetings, if you try to do it on your own and it's not working out, that's what we're here to help you with.
And one tip that I provide is that, we hear from people that say, oh gosh, our family members, they keep their cards close to their chest. We don't talk about this kind of stuff. That's something that we hear. And we are aware of situations like that. But what we have found too is if you say, listen, mom or dad, we have recently updated our planning documents, our wills, our trust, and things like that. We've really been looking at this, and we've been very intentional on all of these things. Where are things at? If something happens to us, and I'd like to share this with you, if something happens to us, where these things are, but when I was getting this together and planning to have this conversation with you, I realized I don't know these things about you. And, I want, I don't want to get in your business on any account values or anything like that, but I need to know the critical information that if something happens to you, where am I going to find this information? Who, beyond the shadow of a doubt, do I need to call? I want to have these conversations now and not wait till, the crisis happens and realize that I didn't know it. And when you bridge it that way, a lot of people are willing to have those conversations.
And I think too, because that's one of the most common questions I get asked on our consults, or me and my team get asked, is, okay, this is all great, because it's the adult kids who are calling me because they're like, oh, dad's in the hospital, what do we do now? And so this is how I encourage and coach our clients, or our prospects and our clients, to say, okay, this is how you broach it with mom and dad. Just simply leverage this webinar and say, I was on this, or I listened to this webinar and this really hit home for us. We don't want to be ill prepared for when there's a crisis, or the next time you go to the hospital. we really need to get our ducks in a row. You can always also ask, what are your goals as you age, mom and dad? And I promise you, they will say two things. One is, I want to age in place at home. That's great. Let's have some conversation about what that looks like. And what if you need care, or when you need care? What do you have for finances to be able to pay that? I have clients that are paying $20,000 and $30,000 a month in home care, and being able to stay at home because they don't want to go to a care facility. So we need to have these conversations. You can also ask questions they can't say no to. Mom and dad, is it important for you to have a say in what happens to you and where you live as you age? Because again, remember, I started my company because the sons and daughters are the ones touring the care facilities, not having any idea what's in place for their parents, right? So you can ask those questions, and again, leverage this webinar and say, this brought up a lot of conversations for our own family. Let's talk about it as an extended family as well. The grab and go binder is critical because, again, when I was still an employee, adult kids had no idea what their parents had in order. So this is what it looks like in real life. We also have a digital version of it as well, but there are 11 tabs in here. And it's like, who are the emergency people to contact? Who are your providers? Who is your financial planner? Who's your estate attorney? Who's your CPA? So there's 11 headings in there: accounts, passwords, medical information, getting all, funeral plans, estate documents, financial, what do you have for assets? It's really getting everything in order, making sure that the documents and beneficiary forms and everything is up to date. I can't tell you how many families come to us, and when we're doing the grab and go binder and we're helping them fill out their binder, if they purchase that package, then we'll help them fill out their binder. But they're like, we don't know any of this information, right? And so behind each heading is a checklist of suggested items to include in that particular section. But I can tell you, most of the clients that come to us, they have totally outdated documents, or maybe they had documents from Michigan, but now they live in Texas, and it's like, okay, maybe you should get Texas documents if you can. Or the decision makers that they named 20 years ago are dead, demented, or they no longer have that trusted relationship with that person. So it really helps you get organized. And in each of the headings or each of the tabs in the binder work as a family agenda item in case you decide you want to kind of tackle having your own family meeting about this type of stuff. We also have a digital version, like I said, which is the same as the hard version, but we have a special needs section because we work with a lot of families that have mom and dad kept, Johnny at home. Well, now dad has dementia and mom can't take care of Johnny and dad, and they all need to be looking at, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we going to live, and where are we going to get the care, and what can we afford? So we have in the digital version, we've got the special needs section as well, so that God forbid something happens to you and you're the parent of a special needs or special needs adult. All of this is already buttoned up. I already talked about the book. It's kind of like the do-it-yourself version, because again, I've had thousands of adult sons and daughters say, I don't know what to do with mom and dad. And if they didn't want to retain us to do it, white glove approach or coach them individually through how to facilitate family meetings, how to choose care communities, how to, tour these care communities, what are the pros and cons of aging in place at home. So I wrote all this in a book. So there's that as a resource if that's of interest to you.
Can we find that on Amazon?
You can. You can also, we've got the invisiblepatientbook.com. The downside of Amazon is that we have no idea who purchases the book. But when they buy it through the invisiblepatientbook.com website, then we can at least develop the relationship and say, hey, thanks for purchasing the book. My tech team is like super way better at this type of stuff than me. So they put that little QR code in there. So that is a list of considerations if you have aging family care, if you have aging family loved ones, you can take a picture of that little square there, and then a whole list of more information will pop up for you.
And as a reminder, everybody is going to get an email with today's slides, so you don't have to hurry up, grab your phone, and feel like you missed it. So you are going to get today's slides for sure. And also, we'll have Annalee's contact information that we have here. Wow, this was so great. I think we need a part 2 of this. So we will plan to schedule with you again, Annalee. The thing is everything happens so fast. We've talked about that before. Is like, we have good intentions and then things, other things fall apart, the wheels off the bus. And so we didn't get to the other things. So I think, hearing this and just knowing that we're not alone and kind of in this journey is for sure a thing. Guys, we have upcoming webinars. You can click this link when you get the slides and it'll take you to any other upcoming webinars that we have on any of the other topics. I always want to mention our team. It's not just me. We work on a collaborative team at Consolidated Planning Group, and we always offer free personalized consultations, and I have a good team too, so I did not do the QR code. So there you go. That's how you get on our calendar. We have a free consultation, and it'll take you to a calendar, and you can book a day and time that works good for you. If you've been attending by podcast and you would like a copy of today's slides, you can get those at contact@cpgcares.net or calling at 281-690-1177. That's 281-690-1177. And Annalee did put her contact information. Her personal cell phone number is in the chat box. So should you want to reach out and kind of learn more about planning the care for your loved one, absolutely. We certainly encourage that. Guys, it's been my pleasure. We are right on time at 1 o'clock. Yep. And Annalee, again, thank you for taking the time to partner with us. And we will absolutely look forward to part 2 of this conversation. So have a good one, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye now.